All right. So far as I know, our Hangout is now live, which means that if you have logged in to watch from the YouTube channel, you should be seeing me now and hearing me. With me is Jill Clements and Spencer Skelley. Spencer's going to take most of the time during our session here so that he can sorry, I'm seeing people are writing notes on our training room channel, but he's going to take most of this time so that he can show us what newsrooms see and how they're working with Q. So until about 6 months ago, most newsrooms were working in the same environment we are. They were working in Newsgate. You know, we would talk story folders, we would talk print packages, we would talk online packages, and we all spoke the same language. And now it's kind of like we're speaking different dialects because most of the newsrooms and reporters are using Q, which is also a product that is created by CCI. And those, so the information that they're inputting into the system is going into the same database that we're accessing from Newsgate, but they're actually using a different window. So what we're aiming to do here is have Spencer kind of show us how it's different so that we know when we're talking to editors and they go, I don't know where to find the story folder name. You'll know why they don't know where to find the story folder name. So I want him to be able to talk to us. The way we've set this up so that we could record it means that most of you are not able to actively participate in the discussion here. And so that's why we set up a Slack channel. You should all have access to it. It's on our regular Slack team, and it's called Training Room. And that is where you'll be able to pose questions. And then as I see them or Jill sees them, we can be your voice and speak them to Spencer. I'd also like all of you to go to that Slack channel and register that you're watching just by saying I'm here, something. You sign in on that Slack channel. It doesn't have to be a novel that you're writing. Just let us know you're here. And in fact, the first question I see is from Tracy Yoakum. She asked, will we ever move to Q? And so that I'll let Spencer deal with that as he kind of launches into all of this. So having said that, thank you all for coming, and I'm going to hand off to Spencer now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Robin. Let's see. I guess I can go ahead and tackle that first question before I get started. And we don't have any immediate plans to move the news desks into Q because we don't really see a need at this point. We don't know what it would really do for you. We don't really see the upside at this point for you. Print design will always, as far as we know, will always stay in Newsgate. There are no plans to migrate that sort of functionality into Q. What is possible is to be able to open stories. Well, it's possible if we chose to configure it to open stories in Q from Newsgate. So there could come a time now that the dust is sort of settled on our rollouts where that might seem like an advantage. But at this point, we have no plans to do that. But of course, a few of you are already using Q because you're doing some online finishing. So there could be things like that, I imagine, that come up and would necessitate more folks from the news desk using the system. So with that being said, let me just jump into the demo. I have just a few slides to go through. These are very similar to the slides that we used in our newsrooms when we were doing our rollouts. And I just want to sort of describe as in the big picture, sort of what's going on, what we're talking about when we talk about Q, and just sort of where things stand, what things are possible, what things are not, etc. And then I'm going to move into just a hands-on demo showing you just kind of the basics of the things that people are doing every day in the system. Okay, so what is Q? It's kind of hard to wrap your head around, perhaps, but Q is actually not its own system. It's actually an interface into the two systems that we've all been using for many years now. All of you, of course, are very familiar with Newsgate. Some of you might be familiar with eScenic or Content Studio. And that was always the online piece to our workflow. Almost all of our work on a day in, day out basis would occur in Newsgate. We would create our story folders. We would create packages. We would lay out our pages. We would ship content online from Newsgate. And when we did that, our online system, eScenic/Content Studio, was the place where that content would go. Okay, so when you sent something to online, and let's say you wanted to add a video to it, folks would go into Content Studio. They would find that story that came from Newsgate, and they would do things like add videos. We've sort of flipped the script with Q. Q is a window into Newsgate and into eScenic. So people are logging into one place and they're seeing eScenic content, which is our online content. And they're also seeing Newsgate content, which is now basically our print content. But it all feels like they're working out of one system. But in reality, it's just a web portal that is showing you into two different systems. The move to Q is sort of in line with the digital first approach that our newsrooms are taking. Instead of working in sort of the print system and shipping things to an online system, we're having them basically work in the online environment while shipping the work back into the print environment. It's a simpler interface. Creating stories is very fast, as you'll see. It's a very simple interface. You'll see, whereas in Newsgate, there's a lot of hunting around for stuff. Q is very simple. It's very easy to find things. And what's really important to know is that everything that people are doing in Q, you're seeing back in Newsgate. Okay, so every time I save my changes in Q, that content should be updating in Newsgate. And I'll show you some of that today. Excuse me. So I sort of touched on this, but it's here are some reasons why we made the change that we did. We wanted a quicker way to get things online. We wanted to be online first, of course, and we wanted things to be simple. This is how folks are accessing Q. It's completely web-based. Google Chrome is the only supported browser. And one of the exciting things about this is that you can work on a desktop or on a mobile device, such as a tablet or a phone. And it's accessible externally. People are actually able to get into Q without Citrix or VPN. So those last 2 points are two of the best advantages that this system gives us. These are things that we were never able to do when people working in Newsgate. That last point is not so important for today's discussion, but it's the only limitation we have when people work externally, which is they can't see their online previews. So the things that can be done in Q are almost everything when it comes to creating content. Just about everything folks need to do for their stories day in, day out, they can do, of course. They're creating the stories, they're writing, they're doing their editing, they're adding videos in Q, they're adding photos and videos, or photos and embeds. They're linking stories to each other. And they're also, of course, creating and managing their print packages. Now, most of the limitations of Q at this point are print related. But slowly but surely, we are closing the gap as we go between what we can do from Q and what folks can do from Newsgate. But as you guys probably know, there are a few fairly significant things that people are unable to do from Q at this point. They can't add fact boxes per se. But I'll show you today how we've taught folks to sort of work around that. They can't really do recipes like they could in Newsgate. We don't have a special recipe content type in Q. and sort of similar to fact boxes and recipes, we can't add other element tags. There's no way, for instance, to add a head label in Q. So it's the tagging, for the most part, that we're still having to rely on Newsgate to do when needed. So those are my slides, and I am now going to switch and move over to Q. Robin, do you guys have any questions before I jump into the demo?
I don't see any questions that have come up yet.
Okay.
But again, if anybody does have questions, put them into that Slack channel called Training Room, and that's where we'll capture them.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm doing today's demo on one of our testing systems, and I'm doing that because we have an upgrade tentatively scheduled for Thursday morning. And so this testing system contains the functionality that's going to be part of that upgrade. So I wanted to kind of show you in this demo the system that people will be using hopefully here in a matter of days. The URL for Q, the easiest way to get to it is to go to qcue.mcclatchy.com. Okay, that is our production system. But for today, like I said, I'll be using our one of our testing environments. So one of the things that is different right off the bat about working in Q is that you don't actually ever enter your credentials. You're not entering a username. You don't enter a password. Rather, you're going to use the link that you see here labeled Login with Google Account. And why don't I go ahead and bump this up a little bit? That might help.
Spencer, while you're doing that, you anticipate that the folks on this call will need access or be getting access to Q?
That's really, that's probably y'all's call. We're happy to kind of consult with you on that. But you know, you have had the need for a few folks, and if you feel like others do need it, if you want to add other online finishers, for instance, that's not a problem. It would just take a help ticket to get that Scenic account created, because most likely they don't have one tied to their news desk accounts. So that's all we would need.
Okay.
So at this point, most of the people on this call, they don't really have a way to go into Q right now and do anything. So yeah. So I'm actually, I'm kind of showing this as if they were using it. I do understand that a lot of people will not be using it, and this is more just FYI. But the way folks do log in is with this login with Google account. And when I click it, I am prompted to choose my Google account, which is my McClatchy email address. It takes a couple of seconds to get in, and there it is. So this is sort of what I consider the home screen for Q. This is what you're seeing right here is a search page that is showing me content from all of the online publications that I have access to. If you were to log into Q and you only saw a few icons over here on the left, like let's just say you saw 3 icons instead of these 7 or 8, that would be an indication that you're not logged into Scenic and Newsgate both. It means you're logged into one, but not the other. These icons that you see along the left-hand side are a combination of Scenic content, which is what you're seeing here. These are all Scenic stories, online stories, as well as some Newsgate content, such as story folders. We don't really work with the folders in Q. We really just work out of the online stories themselves. So let me go back to search. And one of the things that is really nice about Q is how easy it is to find stories. In Newsgate, you have to be a member of a team, or you have to go to a budget, or you have to hunt and peck around the system. one of the nice things in Q is that if you know part of the headline, if you know who wrote the story, it's really quite easy to go find that story. So let's just say I wanted to find my most recent story. I could just type in my last name, and you can see a test that I was doing earlier today at the very top. I do have other options for searching. I can open this funnel on the right, and I can say I want to just look for photos. And I only want to see photos from a certain publication, such as kansas.com. I could do that, like so. And as I add more and more filters, my results get narrowed down. So finding content is very easy in Q. We don't really use story folder teams anymore. That's sort of a Newsgate thing. Doesn't really apply so much in Q.
Hey, Spencer, do you have the ability to enlarge your screen at all?
Mm-hmm. Sure. That better?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. So that is just a very quick demonstration of how people are searching for content in Q. Pretty much anything in a story is searchable. It really makes finding content quite easy. Another thing that's different about Q is nothing expires. Folders in Newsgate will expire after 15 days. Pages, of course, expire after 15 days. Stories that are created in Q, they never expire. So anything that's been created in Q or published online is always going to be available. Okay. In addition to search, I'll just quickly show you one more of these workspaces, which is called the recent list. And this is just my list of the most recently opened content by me. So it's stories, it's photos, could be video, could be anything. And it's a list of, I believe, 20 items most recently opened by me. The rest of these workspaces we'll skip for today. They're not very important. They're not used very much.
So Spencer, when we were all in Newsgate, newsrooms were used to finding stories through budget lists and through sometimes work queues, like a slot editing work queue. What are you finding? Are people using budget lists or the equivalent here, or are they just going to recent? I mean, how are people navigating the story folders in the queue?
Right. So most people are not. They're not using those lists, I would say. The people who are probably the print coordinators, because there really is no other way from Q to sort of, there's no way in Q to get an overview of print lineups. It's kind of interesting. Newsgate is completely list-based, I guess you could say. Everything's about going to the right list. Budgets, pages, etc. Q doesn't really have that functionality. There's no budgeting tool within Q. It's all about search. At this point, that's, I would say, a weakness of Q, is that it doesn't provide those sorts of lists, especially for online. There's sort of I think CCI's kind of got a goal to build some of that in. But at this point, if people need to see that sort of thing, Newsgate is really their only option. So we do have people in every newsroom who do spend time in both systems. They spend time in Q, but especially the people who do print are looking at Newsgate quite a bit still. Okay, so now I'd just like to show the basics of creating a story and writing a story, publishing it, etc. So in the upper left-hand corner of Q, there is a plus button. And whenever we create new content, we're going to hit plus. And typically we would select story. And when I do so, that story opens in a new browser tab. So this is what a new story looks like. We've got a lot of empty fields. Only one of these fields is mandatory, and it's the headline field. It's the one with the asterisk outlined in red. So this is something that is probably useful for your folks to know, which is that when we save a story for the first time in Q, that will create a story folder back in Newsgate. And the name of that story folder comes from the headline of the Q story. So whatever I call this the first time I save, so that story folder back in Newsgate is going to be called this, okay? So what we have recommended to our newsrooms is that the first time they save a story, think of the headline as a slug. And then after that first save, change the headline to a real headline, okay? So if we take a look in Newsgate right now, we should be seeing, give it a minute. We'll check back, but what we'll see here is you'll see a story folder. Sometimes it takes a minute to generate, but it'll be called News Desk Demo 0612. So let me go back to Q.
So Spencer, the reason we more frequently see story folders now that are called something like "She never knew what hit her" is because people are typing a real headline in before they save it the first time, and we end up getting the headline as the story folder name.
That's right. And this is taking a little longer than usual, but I'm sure it'll show up in a minute. That is exactly right. It is possible to rename the folder from Q. It's not possible to rename the text itself from Q. You would have to go into Newsgate to do that. So if you're seeing problems with story folder names, that's exactly right. That's why. It's because people aren't paying attention to what's in this field the first time they save. Okay, I'll just quickly move through the story fields in a Q story. Starting at the top, we have a field called notes. You know that as Z message. Whatever I put into this field in Q will populate the Z message field in Newsgate. We have a few online only fields here for SEO, search engine optimization. This is not used for print. SEO summary. SEO keywords. And then you'll notice my byline was populated automatically, which is a nice feature. We'll skip the second byline field here, which is sort of a legacy byline that we don't really use anymore, that you guys don't see in Newsgate. What you'll see in Newsgate is coming from here. And then, of course, the body field and the dateline field. The dateline field is separate in Q, but when it goes back to Newsgate, it merges into the body field and is tagged correctly as a dateline. Let me go get some text here.
Spencer, while you're doing that, can you tell us, is the SEO summary field that you just showed us, is that what shows up as the summary in the summary field in print?
Yes, okay. It is. That's right. So maybe it is used by you guys sometimes.
Oh, very rarely.
Okay.
Although it does affect, sometimes we'll edit headlines based on what's in the summary field. So we can see it and we pay attention to it. It rarely runs in its entirety in print.
Curious why my story is not going back to it. So sometimes we run into an issue on these testing systems where things aren't quite working the way they're supposed to, because people are always doing things with them. Yeah, still not seeing my folder.
Looks like we just lost Spencer. I'm going to assume he's going to be back in just a minute. Let me just reach out to him separately. But this kind of, puts a little bit of suspense into our presentation here, so that's always fun. So Jack asked, is there a way for the text fields to generate smart quotes? There's going to be an answer to that. But anyway, that's fine. Hi.
I accidentally closed Chrome. It didn't warn me or anything. It just closed. Okay. Sorry about that. I think I was saying when I closed my browser that I'm still not seeing my folder back in Newsgate, which is weird, but we do see this sometimes with our test systems where who knows what's going on at this time. So I will create another, I'm going to create another story for you guys, and I'll create it in Kansas City instead of trying to make that other one work. I save my changes. That should...
We can't see your screen anymore.
That should, sorry. Better?
Yep, that's great.
Okay, that should create my folder back in Newsgate. I'm going to add a few notes. And I'm going to add a byline. And I'm going to save. While that's saving, I'm going to grab some body copy. I'm going to cheat and just copy from here. Let's take a look. Wow, I wonder if somebody's doing something on the system. Okay. We'll check back on that. When I get to the print stuff, if I need to, I'll just switch systems so that you can see that. Okay, so those are really the basic fields. There aren't that many. Notes, headline, SEO fields, dateline and body.
So with dateline being a separate field, how does it get in front of the body for print?
It's automatic. Back in Newsgate, our bridge takes that field and merges it into body and applies the tag. So nobody has to do anything.
So one of the, Barry Talley, who's one of the people watching, says, last night a dateline appeared about 14 paragraphs into a story. The news editor said everything looked fine on his end. How could that have happened in Q?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'd like to see it. When he says it was 14 paragraphs into the story, that was in the print text?
I presume so, but I will ask him to send you the slug, and you can look through the records.
Yeah, I've not heard of that being an issue. Okay. So I did want to show you a few things about managing stories. Over here on the right-hand side of my screen, we've got this panel where we can do all kinds of different things. We get various information about our story from here. We can also add this to multiple sections, multiple publications, like so. We have this field called related. This is where we would put our photos and videos or related stories. One of the nice things you can do from Q is from within a story, you can search the system. So let's see, I wanted to look for photos. It's just a drag and drop from here into these fields, like so. We can move these around so they display in different places. So, and we can preview. the story at any time. So this is what the story is looking like so far. Okay. We can also add videos to our stories. Like so. Not sure what that video is all about. Something's up with that video, but typically you would see a video here at the top.
So it's worth pointing out that you keep saying adding photos to your story, adding videos to the story, but what you're really doing is you're adding photos and videos to the online package.
I am. And it looks like my story finally created itself back in Newsgate. Here it is. And you can see as I'm adding things to my online package, you're right, but it's also adding it to the story folder back in Newsgate. So it's
I guess my point is if you open that up in News Director, you'll see that those are not media neutral items.
That is true. There's really no such thing as media neutral once you're working in Q. Everything comes from the online story first.
So that's why on our end, when we're looking for content, we won't see any loose media neutral items anymore. All the original parent items that are coming from newsrooms are always embedded into the online package.
That's true. That's true for a lot of stories, maybe most. Where you may still see loose items are where photo assignments are involved, and perhaps they didn't use every photo online. You might see some loose photos in the News Director session, but that's about the only time you would see that. This upgrade that we're about to roll out does now give people the ability in Q to create assignments, photo assignments. Okay. Something we've been lacking up until this point, so that's going to be a really nice addition. And then when those photos come in, there's my assignment in Newsgate. When those photos come in, I'll just pretend I'm a photographer and I've finished my assignment.
Are photographers still working in Newsgate?
Yeah, yes, because they, to the extent that they work in Newsgate at all, they are for the most part, because especially photo editors who have to manage assignment lists, the only place to do that is Newsgate. So when the assignments come in, we have a panel in my story called Assets, and those photos show up here. So I can take these photos and add them to my online package.
So do newsroom editors have any cues as to whether the resolution is sufficient for print or whether the file format is one that's supported for print? Do they have any tools to help them know that when they're dragging content in?
Well, as far as the format goes, we only support RGB JPEGs. So that is still, if you put in, let's say, a CMYK photo, it would not display online. So you do know that.
We're seeing a lot of PNGs, so I assume you also support PNGs.
Well, we don't officially support them. They may show up and we tell people not to use them.
Okay.
But they used to do that in Newsgate too, as you know.
And then how would they be editing the cut lines on these photos they just dragged in?
So for right now, the way they're doing that is they are you would open the photo, which you can do with a right click, or you can double click. That opens the photo in its own tab. And there it is. You see the crop and the caption information here. The edits from here would flow back to Newsgate. We are moving or working toward a workflow where you'll actually be able to, from the story, open these little cards, and you'll be able to edit the captions from the story. But we're not there yet.
So we're seeing periodically prompts on our end in Newsgate that a photo caption can't be edited in Newsgate print packages because a newsroom reporter or editor has that photo locked, the text associated with that photo locked on web app, API app or something.
Yep.
Is that
web API app?
So what do you know what causes that, and do you know how we get around that?
We do see from time to time people are somehow leaving fields locked. So if I were to make an edit, there we go. See the lock icon there? I don't know how well you can see that. It's locked by me. That means that the system says I have unsaved changes to this field. So somehow in queue, so web API app means queue, basically. And if you see somebody's got something locked, it means that the system thinks they have unsaved changes for that field. Somebody in that newsroom should be able to unlock it for you. Let's say this was locked by me, and Robin, you or somebody else needed to unlock this. They always have the option to right click and to steal that lock. We see it a lot with photos, and we don't know why exactly. So typically people in the newsroom have gotten used to sort of stealing locks when they need to.
Can they steal locks from us on print?
No. No, they can't steal locks. It's only on the online side. So you can see here, I've got this field locked by me because I have unsaved changes. Once I save my changes, that lock is gone. So somebody would need to go into that story and remove that lock. But that's interesting to hear. I did not realize that you guys were getting that a lot. So that's something I can bring up with our folks.
I'm told that often when you reach the editor identified in the prompt, they say they're not in the content or sometimes never have been. So I think this is probably getting a little far afield, but just to let you know, we are running into that periodically. So, but I know you've got more you want to show us. You want to show us actually how the print package gets created and how what that looks like in Newsgate.
Yes. So let me close this. So print packages can be created in Q. It's where most of them are being created these days. There is a plus button in the upper right-hand corner of our stories. And gives me a list of my most recently used packages or products here. I'm going to use Kansas City News Broad. And don't know if you guys saw that, but when I selected that product, if you look in the upper left, I now have a print package here and an online package here. So there's online and there's print. So you can see there's the date line in the body field. These icons, in my opinion, are a little bit misleading because they look like they're unlocked to me, but this really means that these fields are locked. If I, by mistake, started to type into this body field, for instance, nothing would happen because it is locked. It is possible to branch the story from Q. I don't know if it's happening much, but if that was a part of your print workflow, if you needed newsrooms to do something for print only, they do have the ability to do that. So there are a few basic things that we're asking newsrooms to do when they create print packages. The first one being, please create print packages. Once you've created your print package, use the right-hand panel and go to this area called Package Properties and select the appropriate run date. Okay, you can, very much like News Director, you can select a run date. It's always going to default to tomorrow. We are asking people to select a zone, edition, and layout desk. And we are asking people when they know the page, when appropriate, they can go ahead and select pages. But at the very least, we want print packages with the right product, the right date, and the right zone, edition, and layout desk at the very minimum. So you can see it is not hard to do. I'll go ahead and add another package for Wichita. So I create my package. You can see now I have, okay. You can see I have now 2 print packages, one for Kansas City and one for Wichita.
Out of curiosity, does the Wichita package that you created second, is it inheriting changes from the online original text, or is it inheriting changes from the Kansas City package, which is what you had on screen when you clicked?
The way I just did it, it's actually inheriting from Kansas City.
Okay.
Because
so that kind of dependency is still possible in Q.
It is, because I created the print package with I basically had the Kansas City package selected when I created the Wichita print package. So if I were to go back, if I went back to my online and created print from here, it would be inheriting from online. Does that make sense?
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, so I've created my Wichita. Again, I'll just go through the steps that we're asking people to follow. Create your print package, go to your package properties, make sure the date is correct, select a zone, edition, layout desk, and in cases where you know the page, you can go ahead and do that too. And then the last thing we're asking newsrooms to do is to change the state of their print texts to slot editing. And they do that right here. One thing that is different about doing this in Q than people are used, or it's different than what they used to do, is they have to do that sort of thing. If they have multiple print packages, you have to do it to each text. So if you're seeing cases where people are marking one print text for slot editing, but you don't see the other going there, it's probably because they neglected to do it to each text. Q does provide some measurement information here in lines. You'll notice in each field, it also provides character and word counts and line counts in the print text. The online text only shows a character count and a word count.
And that's one of the reasons that we have been asking all the newsrooms to use word counts as their new standard, because that is a very easy number for them to come by, even when they're still online.
Yes, exactly.
So can you show us a little bit of the tagging that is available for print?
Right. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there is no place here in Q for me to add something like a head label. And I know that's been an issue. And now you're seeing why. I really have no way to do it here. But we can add, a lot of our inline tags in the story itself. So some of the basics there would be things like subheads. In Q, it's known as an H3 tag. It's a header tag. Back in Newsgate, it will be tagged as a subhead. Let me add some text here that's not misspelled so you don't see all these underlines. Okay. People can do things like notes from this they're called macros in Q. They have notes. They can do bullets. Okay. They can do bullet lists. Like so. There we go. M dashes, if you're seeing bad dashes, you should not be seeing that. They do have an M dash macro. It's Alt minus in Q, not that you need to know the shortcut. But if you're seeing people giving you double dashes or things like that, they shouldn't be doing that. They should be using the long dash in Q. All of these things go back to Newsgate and should be coded correctly.
And what about smart quotes? I know that's been an issue. Where does that stand?
Yeah, we're close. So there's a minor configuration that we can put into place that would give us smart quotes basically in the body copy. We're having to develop ourselves smart quotes for headlines. When that is ready, we're going to roll them out together. So soon is the best estimate I can give you on that one. Fact boxes. I did want to mention fact boxes. We don't have a tag for fact boxes in Q. What people are doing for the most part is tacking their information to the end. And hopefully they're doing things like bullet lists. And then if they need, well, actually, Robin, this is a question for you perhaps. Do you guys want people to note that on their print plans?
No, what we would expect, and I'll say this for Spencer's benefit, but also for the benefit of the other people listening, is if it's okay with the newsroom that it run at the end, then they don't have to take any special action because it will run at the end of the story.
And I've heard from newsrooms that are fine with that.
If it's important to them that it be pulled out on the front, then since that cannot be done in Q, we need them to put that on a print plan. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, if it's a movie review and they really want to have the 4-star, review out front, then we would want them to put on the print plan, please move the fact box to the front, which would require then somebody in the news desk going and copying and pasting this info from the end of the story into a fact box element within Newsgate.
Yes, and we do have the ability to add stars for things like that, by the way.
Just so you know, the bullet list is not universally loved among news desk folks. And that's probably a spacing issue and one that we can take a look at. But as you can see, the reason that Spencer's asking folks to use the bullet list is because it kind of sets it apart in a special way that it wouldn't be set apart otherwise online.
Right.
And it also puts it in a different font in CCI so that it actually looks more like a fact box and less like a body copy.
It changes the spacing, I guess you could say. Well, actually, no.
I think it puts it in a sans serif when you've got it in. I could be wrong. I don't know. I haven't paid that much attention.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if there are issues on the other side when it comes to bullet lists, we'd like to hear about that.
Are you guys planning to have a fact box element available ever?
Yeah, it's tricky because the plan for fact boxes is we'd like to make them sort of a separate object that you would create just like you do a story. And that way we can have standing fact boxes that we can associate with many, many stories. Like, for instance, you could have a football schedule that you could update in one place, and then it would be updated wherever it runs. Or election information, that sort of thing, sort of dynamically updating fact boxes with multiple stories. And so, of course, the tricky part of that is we need that separate object to integrate back into Newsgate as part of a single story. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to show you in Newsgate, what we've got here is everything. You see everything we've been doing in Q is here. Our photos are there. If I wanted to edit the print story from here, I could open that package and layout champ. Come on, there it goes. The photos are not in that package automatically, so I can do that from here. This test system's running a little bit slow, but you get the idea. And then because the editor sent that story to slot editing from Q, once I mark this story, this layout design done, like so, I should see that story in my planning list. Oh, there it is. It just popped in. Okay. So has that been working out okay for you guys, Robin? The recent workflow changes?
In fact, if anybody on this call tells me we're still missing big swaths of design done stories, please know that is news to me, and I would like to know. But I think it's better now that we've adjusted that workflow stuff.
Great, great. So let's see. We're almost at the end of our hour. That is just about everything I had planned to demo. Is there anything else I can show you, or are there questions?
A couple of questions that didn't naturally fit in that I've got hanging out here. Jason Hoskin asks, he says, occasionally we have a story come over in 1 or 2 really long graphs in print while it looks fine online. Do you know what causes that and how it can be avoided?
My guess is that it was probably copied and pasted from an external source and they didn't clear the formatting. But if there's time, we would love to see that when it happens. Do you guys know whether anybody's looked into it, as far as the ticket goes?
Actually, Spencer, I don't know if a ticket was filed, but I do know that the solution or the answer that you just gave was correct when we looked into it a couple of times a few weeks ago.
Okay.
So
yeah, and
code that was from random place on the web or something interfering.
And let me ask you this: when things like that are happening, do you guys have a way to sort of provide that feedback to the newsrooms? Like, if a particular newsroom's doing that a lot, are they hearing about it?
Yes,
we're getting better about that.
Okay.
In the case
and let me just show you real quick. I know we're almost out of time, but I did want to show you that when you copy from external sources, like a website, like I've done here, there is a built-in thing in Q that allows you to select that pasted text, and you see this little A with the eraser. It's called clear formatting. It's not perfect. It doesn't work for everything. The biggest one being email. That is another thing we're close to having, though, which is a way to strip pasted email copy as well.
And so are you able to paste without formatting?
Yes. Yes, you are. The drawback as far as Q is concerned when you do that is that, for instance, you'll notice here, if I paste without the formatting, paste as plain text, everything comes in a single paragraph.
One big paragraph.
Yeah. So if it's not much text, no big deal. If we're talking large swaths of text, kind of inconvenient. But that is the safest way to get stuff into the story.
Okay. And just so everybody on the call knows, if you feel like you are encountering the same problem over and over and over again, if you'll report to the coordinators, then the coordinators will log it on a mechanism that we have, and then the directors get involved and we try to track down answers. So the easiest way for you guys to flag this stuff is to let the coordinators know. They'll kind of push it upstream. And it is always okay to file a help desk ticket. So
absolutely,
I'm not trying to discourage anyone from doing that. It is always okay to file a help desk ticket. That's how people know that there are problems and they know to fix them.
Yes. And believe me, even the person who helps you is not the only one looking at those tickets. You know, we're looking at them. You know, let's say you sent in a ticket last night, and there are people like me, and especially Anne Marie Stevenson, who are looking at those the next day. You know, kind of like, what was this all about? You know, what do we have to do to fix this? You know, so yes, those are a huge help in more ways than one.
All right, I see there's one more question coming in. At least somebody's typing. And while that question is coming in, I will just say thank you, Spencer. I really appreciate your taking the time to do this. I also really appreciate everybody taking the time out of their schedule to watch. I think if nothing else, it helps us all understand why we are frequently seeing packages that aren't pointed to the right date or packages that aren't directed to the page or the section we mean. You know, this helps us understand that everything's in a different place and it's not super obvious, and stuff that seems like second nature to us is kind of tucked away in different places. So I appreciate that. And then, okay, this last question wasn't for you so much as it is just a notation for directors to clarify something that's not clear. So at any rate, thank you very much. And since nobody else can clap for you, I'll just do a little clap myself. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks everybody, and of course, let me know if you ever have questions. We're always happy to answer those for you.
Is there a list of the changes that are coming on Thursday? And tangential to that, is there a list of the tags that you can successfully put in Q that will work in print?
First one is easy. McClatchy.com/tools. And there is a link from this page. Bump it up here. So McClatchy.com/tools. There's a link here for Q. And we are always adding to this. This is where you will find all of our Q help documentation. I would say, to answer that other question, the best link from here is probably going to be right here under macros. Okay, those are the basics. Subhead's a little bit different, but everybody knows about that. But the rest of them are all in this macro list.
Okay.
So as we expect in the future that we may be adding to that as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.